Hello everyone, today you get to see my right foot instead of my left, and well, I guess you've seen both of them, but I just thought I'd switched up a little bit. And today I want to comment on, what I want to start by commenting on is the new ground rules that the Academy has decided to put into place if you want to get your movie nominated for an Academy Award. You have to jump through various hoops as far as casting goes, and as far as I guess storyline in some ways. You have to. I don't have all of the rules in front of me right now, but it's basically you got to have not as many white people. You got to have more gay subplots. You got to have more stories involving POCs. POCs, POC, people of color, and all the anti-white stuff that we're so familiar with now, except it's been taken to a new extreme where now if you make a really great movie that just happens to have a bunch of white people in it and no gay subplots, then they just say, well, sorry, out of luck, man. Your movie's really good. What can I say? But it's just a bunch of white people, and there's no gay stuff. So how can that possibly be the best movie of the year, right? God. Now I think that, well, the first thing I'll say is about all of this is that awards are always political, have always been political, and there's always been virtue signaling, but particularly in recent years. And so there's kind of, this is more of a case of them just making what had been unwritten, basically a written rule now. Do I think it's outrageous? Of course I think it's outrageous. But here's the thing about it. I think if you care about winning acclaim from your peers or from your mentors or from those who surround you in your industry, if that's the thing for you, if that's what it's all about for you, then I guess you're just gonna have to jump through those hoops, man, and do what you're told. Not enough gay stuff, not enough trans stuff. You better have a trans character here. You better have a gay subplot here. You better have some non-white people here doing non-white stuff. But I mean, what if you don't care? And you shouldn't care. Like, that's the thing. You shouldn't care. If you're devoted to your art, then it's all about, of course it always feels good to win plaudits and to have people say nice things about you, and to get awards, to get up on television and grab that trophy and say, I'd like to thank, oh my God, I just can't believe it. That whole, which I don't watch. I don't watch it. I haven't watched it for a good long while, because it's just so also nauseating. But this goes for other things too, like, it's always a big deal, like, oh, this band's not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame yet, and yet this other band is. All these other bands are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and this band, which is so much better than all those other bands, isn't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Well, I mean, who cares? Like, again, it's one of those things. Obviously, people do care, but people shouldn't care. People should care about, not about getting awards and getting recognition from your peers or from, is it so much from your peers as it is from like your the people that you just want to impress, so that you can go around and feel prestigious. I've always just had I've always just felt a great deal of contempt for that whole thing. So, in a way, it's ridiculous and it's absurd. And I know that Quentin Tarantino has spoken out against it. Good for him. And I think others have as well. But I more than that, it's sort of like you should just shrug and say, well, they can award whatever they want to award. I mean, if they decide that there's got to be gay stuff in a movie in order for it to qualify for an Academy Award, and you can't just have a bunch of straight white people doing straight white things, because that's just not going to cut it. That's just that's obviously not Oscar worthy. Having white people do a bunch of white things all the time. Yeah. So, but again, I want to more or less sort of circle back to something I've mentioned before, and that is this entire trend of what's called wokeness now, what was called political correctness before. Again, let's just think back to when it all started, when it all began going in this direction, because we can complain about it all we want, and people do complain about it, and I understand complaints, because it is a frustrating and annoying and unfair and ultimately, I would say, wicked thing, wicked because at its core is hatred. At its core is hatred towards normalcy, hatred towards the native populations of the West. That's what it's all about. But what people have to understand, I believe, in order to put all this in greater perspective, is, there are some people out there, some people in my audience, some WNs, who just think this all began because of how World War II went. No, look, in World War II, every side that was fighting, there was no conception of multiculturalism. There was no conception of on the side of the Allied powers versus the Axis powers. There was no we've got to defeat Germany because we need to multiculturalize the West, and Germany is standing in the way with their racist doctrines. And that was the idea, even if it was unspoken, was that the West was white, and it was, generally speaking. There were exceptions, but that was the case, generally speaking. So World War II was not fought, for those reasons. And I mean, I've made this point over and over and over again. You can go back to my video, or it was actually originally a podcast, and I think it was made into a video, and I don't know if it's still up or if Colin Liddell has chosen to take it down. I'll look for it, but it's like what the alt-right gets wrong. It's something that I talked about a few years ago, and one of those things was that that everything would have been better if World War II had ended differently. But really, the flex point for how we got to be the way we are now, for how we got to, you know, sink down, how the vortex into the void, you know, the slow spiral into the kind of nightmare world that we're seeing more and more around us now. That really started not at the end of World War II, not even with the so-called swinging 60s and you know, the 60s and 70s and all the sexual revolution and the pill and all those kinds of things. Even though that stuff was bad, that was destructive, and it did take its toll. And I believe that it was imposed from on high by nefarious people, what are called bad actors now. Why do they call them bad actors? When I think of bad actors, I think of like Keanu Reeves. And I don't know, I can't think of someone else, but you know what I mean. People who can't act, people whose job it is to act, but who can't act, who aren't very convincing when they play their roles. But somehow in the last few years, the term bad actors has meant people who are influential and who mean harm and who do harm. You know, whatever, so be it. I don't know why that term got to be used, but fine. So yeah, there was bad things have happened. Bad things have happened throughout history. But what really started us down this downward spiral, the flex point was, and I've said this before, it was the end of the Cold War. It can be traced directly to the end of the Cold War. But before the end of the Cold War, things were different in the West and in America. There was no corporate anti-whiteness. There was no corporate virtue signaling about LGBT stuff. There was no corporate virtue signaling about radical feminism, but men suck, and how, you know, the white man is the cancer of history. I know that phrase that the white race is the cancer of history was written by some feminist in some book, I think was published in the 70s. But ideas, points of view like that were not acceptable in the mainstream. You know, that you had your radical feminists and you had your ethnic radicals and so forth. And you had people who hated whitey. You had feminists who hated men. You had gay rights stuff. All that stuff was around, but it just didn't start to. It was kept in its place. Okay. What I mean by that is there was some force out there that was elevating, what was healthy and good and normal. And at the end of the Cold War, they stopped doing that. It was a slow transition. It didn't happen all at once. But it was only with the end of the Cold War that this transition began to take place. And I remember when it all started happening. I remember in the early 90s, after the fall of the Soviet Union. Of course, at the time, I didn't think anything of it. I didn't think there's a causal relationship here. I didn't think, well, now that communism has fallen, Now, they're promoting this destructive cultural liberalism slash leftism slash, what later became known as cultural Marxism, and what was at the time called political correctness. There was no political correctness really before, say, 1990, 1991. There was no political correctness to speak of in the 80s. You young people, I know how I sound when I say this, but, you listen to music from the 80s now, and you think, oh, I can, appreciate things, I don't know, what gets called hair metal music. You watch, you see Motley Crue videos or Def Leppard videos or whatever, something like that, and it's like it gets appreciated in this ironic sort of way. But in the 80s, there was no irony. There was no irony to bands like that. When you saw Motley Crue performing, with their supposedly hyper macho personas, yet heavily made up and wearing lipstick and rouge and everything, and with long hair. But at the time, it wasn't. It was macho. It was super macho badass. Okay, there was nothing ironic in the 80s. I mean, there was irony. Irony was a thing, but you didn't listen to that kind of music ironically. It was only later, really starting in the 90s, that this sort of viewing through the lens of irony became a thing, and seeing seeing what was previously appreciated just in a straight sort of way, and I mean straight in every possible way you could define that term, but later being looked at, ironically. And I've spoken out. I mean, I am not against irony. I'm not against seeing things ironically. I'm just trying to make a point here. The culture was different. There wasn't this sneering. I mean, there's irony, and you can be ironic and not be, some just sneering jerk who sneers at everything, and looks down on what's normal and decent and proper and innocent and pure. But I'm telling you, and again, I think I'll bring this what do I call it? This lecture. It's not really a lecture. Just this it's not really a rant either. Let me just bring this long-winded talk to a close here. But by simply observing that you had in the 70s and the 80s, it's not that everything was perfect then. It's not. I'm not saying that at all. Of course, things had fallen a long way, even by then, and the sexual revolution was the big bugaboo. The sexual revolution, to my mind, is the greatest evil of the 20th century, and one of the greatest evils of history. But that said, we were living with the ramifications and the detritus left by the start of the sexual revolution, in the mid to late 60s, maybe the early 60s. I guess the the pill was around 61, 62, right? That was sort of the time it first became available, and then not long after that, abortion laws got legalized. I mean, and the pill was promoted by things like Time Life, just like Time Life promoted LSD. Isn't that interesting? You know, find out all about LSD, the newest, the coolest, craziest drug in Time Life magazine. Yep. I mean, there's definitely a hidden hand there. Not so hidden to me. I don't find it to be hidden at all. I see it very clearly. But all that said, when things radically changed for the worse was it had to wait until after the Cold War collapsed, after the Soviet Union collapsed. And so, you know, just to bring this all back to what I was talking about at the beginning of all of this this long-winded talk here. And if people who have stayed with me to the end, I appreciate you. But yeah, like the things, every time you hear about something like this, every time you hear about some new anti-white dictate or some new like pro-quote diversity dictate, some forced inclusion or some forced, showing how virtuous you are by being less white and less male and less heterosexual, just essentially being against what was and has always been normal in the West, as long as the West has existed. That step was taken after the Cold War was over. And that, I think, is something very interesting to note, and something that I'm still puzzling over, and something that I'm still, I'm still wanting to investigate, because it opens up a lot of interesting questions, which I have on my Substack page. It seems that the article of mine that's gotten the most traffic is one that's titled "Ukraine is the Deep State. The Deep State is Ukraine." So I invite you to check that out. In addition to other articles I've written about this general trend. So those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Talk to y'all soon.